What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Powerhouse Mentality podcast. I'm your host. I'm Caitlin Kenneth Smith, and today we have back on the podcast Brooke Wheaton. Damn it, Brooke! I had this all planned and I fucked it up. Brooke,
It's
can you
okay.
give
I
yourself a
can't
little
even
bit of an
say it half the
intro?
time.
So, give me an intro as if you were, let's see, taking an Uber, and the Uber driver turned around and was like, "What do you do?"
Oh, what do I do? Okay.
Yeah, who are you? What do you do?
So mainly I'm a mom right now, a mom of two. But I have been doing online nutrition and exercise coaching for the past 5 years. Well, yes, I recently had another baby. So we're
Yeah,
3 months
last
postpartum.
last time we had you on the podcast, I guess it was like at least 9 months ago because you had just announced the pregnancy.
Yes, I was thinking about that actually. I think it was in January, wasn't it? Because
I don't know. I just remember like you had recently announced that you were pregnant and it was like you were dealing with all the shoulder stuff and it was like, okay, now this
yes,
is like another hurdle that's being thrown at you.
yeah, that was kind of like the theme of the episode.
Yeah.
And I was still in Arizona. I hadn't moved yet. My husband had moved. So
Right. Okay, so now Brooke's in Ohio.
yeah, so now we're in Ohio.
Nice. So today we have Brooke on because she's going to talk all about postpartum because I feel like there's a lot of women out there, especially like in our age group, because what
Hmm.
I've been saying to my husband lately is like a couple of years ago, I was like, wow, everybody's getting engaged. And then it was like, wow, everyone's getting married. Now it's like,
Yep.
wow, everybody's having a kid, has a kid, or is having a miscarriage. And
Yeah.
so let's
Yeah.
talk all about like postpartum and the importance of that. We'll get into that topic. But first, I want to kind of ask you, Brooke, because this isn't your first rodeo. You've done it before.
Yeah.
So, what kind of experiences have you had like in the postpartum? And you can be as vulnerable or as non-vulnerable as you want and get as deep as you want. But have you found, my first question would be, have you found that it's different the second time around versus the first time?
Yes. Everything has been different. It's so
Yeah.
crazy. So I will say 5.5 years between my pregnancies. Like that's the age gap. Um, Definitely older and feeling it. So there's
Wiser.
that. Um, so I was 30 when I had Gianna, and
Mhm.
now I'm 36 now. Um, so pregnancy wise, okay, my pregnancies aren't terrible. I know I complained a lot on Instagram if you saw my stories, but
I feel like
they
that's just
weren't
the theme
terrible.
though, right? Like if you're pregnant, you're supposed to complain about it.
Yeah, yeah, like it could have been way worse. Like I had the nausea and stuff like that, but I was very lucky to I was able to work out both of my pregnancies all the way up until I had them.
Mhm.
So the normal nausea and things like that. But I will say this pregnancy, more aches and pains. Like Lily was a bigger baby. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but like more hip pain this time. Just I had to be more cautious with things with working out.
Yeah,
And so that was a little frustrating. But
for sure.
postpartum wise, it's been night and day. Lily's definitely a very different baby than Gianna was. Gianna was the best sleeper, like from the start. So like sleep deprivation wise, that's been a struggle. But other than that, like mood and everything has been amazing. And I think it has a lot to do with obviously this sounds horrible, but I set my expectations so low for like
I
breastfeeding and
mean,
pumping and all the things.
expectations are so important because I feel like, and we'll talk about this, a lot of people
Mhm.
just don't have the correct expectation going into something. And I use this analogy with my clients all the time is like they'll compare to like their fitness journey when they have kids to their fitness journey when they didn't have kids. And I'm like,
Yes,
it's a completely different thing. So
it
you have to
is.
set your expectations correct because you're gonna quit every single time because you're not gonna meet those expectations.
Right. You're just going to feel so defeated right away.
Hmm.
So, um, and I will say, like, this is a big thing I've been trying to make on my posts and stuff too, is like a support system and asking for help. My first time around, I had good friends in Arizona, but I had no family. Like no
Yeah.
family around. Brian worked crazy hours. It was literally like I was on my own and I was so depressed and so like had the worst postpartum anxiety. This time around we moved back closer to family. I like when I'm postpartum, I like having people around. I know a lot of people are like, don't have visitors. And I'm like, I like that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't expect them, I don't need help. Like, I just like to have the company.
Hmm.
So that's been really nice. But I do have help and support. And that's, I think that's the biggest difference is like I'm taking the help also. Like
Mhm.
before I would ask for it, and then if Brian didn't do it, I would just get mad, and he's like, "Tell me what you need so I know what you need and don't just like expect me to know what you need." So,
Yeah, it's like how every husband complains about, right? I
oh,
can't
right.
read
It's
my
like
wife's mind. Like,
yeah,
yeah, maybe I actually should communicate this point that I need.
right. It's basically marriage in general.
Yeah. But I think that is a huge point is that so many people like they either feel like, oh, I need to do this on my own,
Hmm.
or like they just don't look for the support or take the help when it's given.
Right.
And I think
Right. And it's
support in
hard.
any area is such a big important thing. Like even like if you're comparing it to like a fitness journey, having somebody to support you is huge.
Right.
Like it's the difference between you succeeding and not succeeding.
Yeah, it's so true. Like, you have people come to you and they're like, I've been trying to do this on my own for years and I'm getting nowhere kind of thing. And both of
Hmm.
us, we always have coaches for ourselves and we've been
Hmm.
coaching forever. So it's like the support and community makes such a difference.
Yeah, it's the same thing kind of, but also different because at the same time, it's like, okay, I have a kid. I can't really quit on the kid. I mean, you could,
True.
but I mean, that's not really, that's frowned upon.
Yes.
But as far as the postpartum journey goes, like, what do you feel like were some of your biggest struggles that you've had either this time around or last time, like just in general?
Yeah. I mean, so the last time the mood, like you're always going to have mood issues because your
Yeah.
hormones are all out of whack. They're out of
Yeah.
whack for like 1 to 2 years postpartum. It's just
Mhm.
inevitable. Um, my biggest struggle this time around is the mom guilt, I would say. Honestly, I wasn't even
Mhm.
thinking about that when I in my notes here. But the mom
Oh.
guilt, um, just how because it's my second baby, and it was me and Gianna forever. Like she was
Yeah.
with me 24/7. We did everything together,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna like cry. She
It's okay. You're actually supposed to cry on the podcast, I'm pretty sure.
she started kindergarten, and it's like when Lily was first born, you're in the trenches when it's like those
Mhm.
first 3 weeks of a newborn, like you're so sleep deprived. I was trying to pump and breastfeed, and then Gianna needed me, and I wanted to be able to
Yeah.
give her my attention, but I'm also healing from a C-section. It's just like crazy.
Yep.
So that is definitely the biggest struggle is the mom guilt. Everything else
Mhm.
has been pretty smooth. I mean, again, back to like my breastfeeding journey this time around is night and day also, but
Mhm.
that's because Gianna was an itty bitty baby and it was a very stressful time that impacts your supply a lot. But um workout wise, like I'm getting it done, but I'm also again back to the expectations, like setting being realistic with things. I know days it's going to be broken up. Like I
Mhm.
know it's not going to be what I want it to be right now. So
Mhm.
and I've kind of accepted that. So
Yeah, especially with the people don't think about it like the added stress, but also like
mhm.
the sleep deprivation. Like you have to be
Yeah.
able to like manage your workouts kind of based on the biofeedback that you're getting from yourself. Like if you're
Hmm.
excessively exhausted and you're going to go and crush a CrossFit workout, it's probably not to your advantage. You're probably not
No,
going to really get much from it.
right. And I've had to have that conversation with a few clients lately. I'm like, because I made that mistake coming back.
Mhm.
I got clear at 6 weeks and I went to CrossFit that day. It
That would
was like,
totally be me. I understand that.
yeah, like it was okay. And I'm still scaling like so much and still being very cautious. But some days that high impact does get to me a little bit.
Mhm.
So I don't know. Do you want me to kind of get into how that's been with getting back to CrossFit and working with my like physical therapist, like
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
symptoms? Because I feel like this is definitely really important for people to hear because on Instagram, and everybody's journey is different, like vaginal birth, C-section,
Mhm.
traumatic births, like it's all so different. Um, I mean, there's so many things that can happen with a vaginal birth, so many things that just happen with pregnancy in general. And I see people posting, I think it's great to get back to like walking and the low impact deep core work and breath work and all that stuff right away, as long as you're feeling up to it. But exactly like you said, we got to think about all the things that play here: hormones, sleep deprivation. Are you even eating enough? Like, are you eating? Are you
Yeah,
eating
which is a
anything?
huge thing, I think, for women in general. And then when they're thrown into this place where, like, when you're breastfeeding, your body
Yeah,
demands more, but people
yeah,
don't realize that. And when you're stressed, your body demands more. So now you're
right.
excessively stressed, breastfeeding, and you're a woman who's probably not eating enough as it is.
Yes, exactly. But I see so many people like bragging about being back in the gym and like lifting heavy, like squatting heavy and stuff. And like kudos to you. Like that's amazing that you can do that. But you might be setting yourself up for failure in the long run. Like,
Yeah.
and this is something I have to remind my clients about, and this is something my physical therapist had to remind me about, because just because you're feeling so good doesn't mean your body's ready. Like they say your tissues are healing still up until like at least 6 to 8 weeks, if not longer.
Hmm.
So there's so many things going on, and it's great that you feel great, but you still need to be cautious, because and this is kind of embarrassing for me to admit, but I definitely went back too hard too fast, and I was experiencing some like minor prolapse symptoms. So
Hmm.
they're definitely under control now, and I'm feeling great. I've been working with a physical therapist because I needed an individualized program for what I had going on. I do think, deep core work, general guides that are out there are great for just healing that minor ab separation, minor issues. But if you got something serious going on, like a prolapse or a lot of leakage, you should definitely like do a more individualized program. So,
Yeah, it's like with anything, right? Like
mhm,
you can get good results through doing a general program, and some people can get phenomenal results, but there
yeah,
are very specific things that certain people need that might not be addressed in those.
right, exactly. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, just a good reminder that you like, just because you feel good, you might just be doing more damage for the long run. So, and have some setbacks, which I did. So,
Yeah, I think that's actually like huge, not just with pregnancy, but also with like injuries. Is
oh
like I
yeah,
had somebody say to me the other day, or like last week, she was like, look, just because you're not feeling pain doesn't necessarily mean that your tissues are healed. Your body's still healing.
right.
And I
Hmm.
think that a lot of people, myself included,
Yeah,
get right back into it. You're like, oh, I feel great. Let me do the movements that I couldn't do and do them at a heavy load. And then it's like, oh, crap.
I know. And
You
then
go
you don't.
backwards.
Right, right. And you might not even feel it like right away either. So
Hmm.
you're like, oh, that did feel good. But then
And then
like,
like later you try to sit up from the couch and you're like, fuck.
yeah, I know. It's so hard. Yeah. Injuries are the worst. Like,
Yeah, no, I know you totally get that. Like you had the shoulder thing, and then, obviously, like I feel like pregnancy coming back from it, it's like it's the same thing in a sense from recovering from an injury, except there's hormones and stress and a new child involved. So there's a lot
yes,
more that goes into it.
right. You have added something completely new to the.
Hmm. Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about like what you would recommend. Like, what are some of the most important things that somebody should know when they're coming off of a pregnancy? Like if they want to
Um,
be successful and they want to start feeling better.
okay, so what I would recommend, like this is what I would recommend for like a client or just anyone that came up to me. I might have to grab Lily in 1 second.
You're fine. It's
But
all part of it.
I would just, recommend re first things first with exercise, take time to reconnect with your core. Just take the time to reconnect with your core and take the time to get down the movements without weight first. That's what I would recommend for exercise. Just ease into it every week. You can add a little more, even with walks. Like
Hmm.
start with like a 10 to 15-minute walk, maybe twice a day. And then the next week you can add a little bit of time to that. Um, and then I would also say the biggest thing would be making sure that you're nourishing your body. That's the
Hmm.
biggest thing.
Hmm.
Because we're healing and maybe we're breastfeeding, maybe we're not, but we're still healing. So definitely taking the time to nourish your body through food, water, replacing vitamins and minerals that have been depleted. I'm gonna grab her real quick so
Go
she
for it.
stops crying.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
I really tried to time it up here.
It's totally fine.
But here we are. You know, everything it's unpredictable with a baby.
That's a fact. Like for those of you listening, Brooke is currently feeding her baby a bottle. It's all
I
about it,
had
you know.
it on standby. I had it ready to go.
See, preparation is so important.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Um, so we were just
So
talking about,
let's backtrack actually. Let me ask you a question.
yeah.
So you were talking about like doing deep core movements and stuff like
Oh
that,
yeah.
and then like starting off with like body weight and then, improving and getting better by adding weight. Now, what are some like you can just throw out a couple random ones that people could do at home
Yeah.
or in a gym or whatever.
For deep core,
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, honestly, there's lots of good people on Instagram that have great stuff. You could look on YouTube also, but really, like, my favorite is just like dead bug variations or bird dog variations.
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest thing with all of those moves is just making sure that you're really properly engaging. And with each movement, we want to, what? We want to, be relaxing all the muscles and then
Mm-hmm.
engaging all the muscles with each move.
Mm-hmm.
So, think of it as you're gonna like inhale through your nose and we're gonna relax everything, our pelvic
Mm-hmm.
floor, um, our core, and then on the effort of the movement, we're gonna exhale and we're gonna engage everything. And this is obviously the breath work is gonna be great. It's gonna transfer over to your other lifts, but it's gonna be super beneficial for actually feeling your pelvic floor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that one thing people do struggle with is they don't pay attention to the deep core work
Yes.
after the pregnancy, and then they are their kid's 10 years old and they're like, oh well, I wet myself every time I
Yeah,
sit up.
I
It's like, well,
know.
maybe you should try. Obviously, that's going to be something that probably happens, but like
Yeah.
if you could fix your pelvic floor a little bit and like help with the deep core work, that's going to help tremendously. And I think that a lot of people also, on the same note, they're doing the deep core work, but they're not doing what you said, where they're actually focusing on like
Right.
relaxing and engaging. They're kind of almost rushing through it because it's like, oh, I just got to do this.
Oh, for sure. And it's boring. Like it's
Yeah,
boring work. It's like physical therapy. Like those
exactly. I
moves
was
are
just
all
going to say it's like PT work where it's like, oh, I really don't want to do this and I kind of want to rush through it. But if you're rushing through it, you're not going to get the benefit and you can negatively impact yourself at the end of the day.
right. Yeah, definitely. And yeah, and also I mean there's a lot of good stuff on Instagram, but
Hmm.
sometimes you'll also see and a lot of doctors I love, not like bashing anyone, but sometimes they just recommend only doing Kegels and
Yeah.
while those can be beneficial for some people's problem is like their pelvic floor is too tight.
Yeah.
So if you're doing Kegels or if you're doing weighted Kegels, like you could be doing way more damage than good. So
Yeah.
I just
And I
think,
think that's something like before I became pre and postnatal certified, like I had
mhm,
absolutely no idea. So I would, I just knew from like listening to like random shit that like, oh, let's
yeah,
do Kegels. And that would be like if I were a trainer in that situation before I got certified, I would have been like, oh, just do like Kegels and let's do those things. Or, I
right.
wouldn't pay attention or my client would be like, I feel good, 4 weeks postpartum. And I'd be like,
Hmm.
cool, let's go. Let's lift heavy when
Yeah.
that's not necessarily what we should be doing. And I think that a lot of people jump back into it too quickly because of the expectations that they see on social media or what they
Oh,
have about themselves in the past. Like, for
for
example,
sure.
you're not Tia Toomey. Like, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, you're not going to go back and win the CrossFit Games a year after you give birth. Probably not like
Yes.
the right expectation to set. She's a freak of nature in all the best
Yeah,
ways.
for
So,
sure. Right. I know it, and it's mentally, it is really hard to be
yeah.
like basically starting over, especially
Mhm.
if you do like, heavy lifting or CrossFit or something like that. But it's also, I also see kind of to that point, like I see a lot of people that didn't work out before pregnancy, didn't work out during pregnancy. Now they want to lose the weight. So now they want to
Yeah.
get into all these crazy workouts. And I'm like, but you got to set the foundation first, like,
Hmm.
So,
That's like with anybody. If they're just
uh-huh.
starting to get back into it, they think like, oh, I need to do more, more, more. And they
Right.
plan to go to the gym 6 days a week, doing like
Yes.
crazy amounts of volume. And they're like, I don't know why the scale's not moving. I'm not seeing results. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
what if we did 3 days a week, full body, and
Hmm.
you actually gave your body time to recover and you actually fueled your body enough?
Right.
It, it's literally night and day difference. And I'm sure it's
Yeah.
the same way coming back from pregnancy.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Now, as far as fueling goes, let's talk about that because
Yeah.
again, another thing that people don't think about is like when you're breastfeeding, you require a lot more than you probably think, but also
Yes.
with the added stress, you also require a lot more than you think.
For sure. So I know there's recommendations out there for pregnancy, like each trimester, increase calories a little bit, which that also really depends on the weight you started at during pregnancy too.
I'm sure.
So
Depends
yeah.
on everything, really,
Oh,
right?
right. And then with breastfeeding, they have there's recommendations too, like um I mean, there's recommendations to add in like 300 to 400 calories. Or what I like to do is kind of, let's find your maintenance
Mhm.
calories. It's obviously it's easier if they've tracked macros before.
Correct.
Maintenance calories change, but kind of get them to a spot in their maintenance calories, and then we add about 200 calories, kind of.
Hmm.
So you're
Hmm.
sort of in a surplus, a little bit of a surplus.
In a
But
surplus, but maybe not because of the energy expenditure change, right?
right, right. And honestly, what I do with, because most people, when they're coming to me postpartum, they, I mean, myself included, like, you probably haven't tracked anything for the past, like, since birth, for at least for a couple weeks or so. So,
Yeah.
so it's truly like survival mode. So,
Hmm.
um, I would say, like, what I have people do is just that first week, just track your food. Let's see where you're at. Let's see where your calories are at, where your protein's at, because protein's super important for milk production, supply.
Hmm.
Um, and then we kind of go from there. Most people are totally under eating. Like, they're not
Yeah.
even hitting 2,000 calories. And that's honestly what most people need is a, around 2,000 calories is
Hmm.
a good sweet spot for a lot of people.
Yeah,
So,
100%. Now, as far as yourself goes, like, because you do have a lot of experience with tracking macros, and like,
mhm.
were you tracking macros during your pregnancy, or were you just kind of going off a feel?
Yeah, I was more so going off of feel. I was loosely tracking.
Yeah.
But again, like you said, I've been tracking macros for like over 5 years.
Yeah.
So
So if we go and weigh some, like, try to weigh out
yeah,
4 ounces of chicken, I could probably be like, that's 4 ounces before you even put it on the scale.
exactly. Yeah. So I was definitely keeping track of my protein because I wanted to keep as much muscle as I could throughout
Yeah.
pregnancy. And then postpartum right away, I had like some meals, prepped, frozen and whatnot to help me get by. I had some frozen meats that were ready to go and all that kind of stuff. And
Hmm.
I have been tracking macros. It's still kind of loosely some weeks. I would say I really want to start dialing it in now, but I'm at the 3 month mark, so I feel like
Yeah.
the I can mentally handle that. So
Yes.
that's also what I tell my clients. I'm like, what can you mentally handle right now? Like we can just like keep track of protein, we can just build our plates. We can, kind of thing. Like we don't have to track incredibly precisely weigh everything right now until you're
Hmm.
ready for that. So,
And I think that's really important for people to hear
mhm.
because I think people have that all or nothing mentality on
Yes,
any sort of a fitness journey where they're like, well, if I'm not tracking my macros perfectly, then what's the point? I'll just
right.
like a stupid person.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's like if most people, if they just track their protein and manage their
Yes.
calories, they will see phenomenal results.
Oh, I know.
But they
It's
aren't
wild.
willing to do it because it's like, oh, but I'm not doing everything.
Yes, exactly. And that's what I try to tell people too, because it's like if you're hitting your protein, you're not going to be craving all the other crap, and your carbs and fats are probably going to fall somewhat in place.
Yeah, 100%. Like, especially if like I have my clients, like if we're just tracking protein, cool. We're gonna track protein. You're gonna get the majority of it as much as possible from
Yes.
whole natural foods because obviously protein shakes and bars are great, but
Yeah.
like they're not gonna fill you up the same way that like a chicken breast or a steak is gonna fill you up. And then
Right.
I have them eat that protein first. And if you're still feeling hungry, then eat, the rest of the stuff. But if you're eating your
Yeah.
protein and veggies first, you're gonna be pretty satiated and you're probably not gonna want to eat the other stuff.
Right. Exactly. Or it's like the portion's going to be a real portion size.
Correct, which is what a lot, and especially if somebody has tracked in the past, they have a better idea of what a portion size actually looks like versus somebody who's never tracked in their life and thinks that a bowl of cereal is like a legitimate
It's,
serving of cereal.
yes, I know.
So, nourishing your body through good nutrition. Are there any specific like foods that you would recommend or like macros that are more important? Obviously protein, but like what about fats and things like that? Like what is more important here?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So obviously, we want to replenish like a lot of the vitamins and minerals. So whole foods, like you hit on the whole food protein, but think lots of color, lots of fiber, so fruits and veggies, things like that. But yes, healthy fats. Healthy fats are really good for the milk quality, if
Hmm.
you're breastfeeding, but also, if you think of like the flush or the Mediterranean diet or Whole30,
Hmm.
they focus on, lowering inflammation. So getting in those good quality fats is going to be super beneficial.
Hmm.
And yeah, honestly, I usually keep people's fats quite a bit higher than I typically would normally.
Yeah.
So, like mine are usually around like 80 to 90 right now.
Yeah.
Um,
I think that a lot of women put their fats far too low.
oh,
And I
for
think
sure.
that that contributes to so many hormone issues.
Uh-huh.
Like when I was prepping and when I was like, when I had my eating disorder, I don't even think I had like any grams of fat. Right.
Yeah.
And then when I was prepping, I had like 20 grams of fat. And like,
Yeah.
I was
That's
like, wow,
wild.
why don't I have a menstrual cycle? Well,
I
duh.
know. Yeah. That's so crazy.
So as far as healthy fats go, like what specifically, are there any specific fats? Like if somebody was like, okay, I want to have healthy fats, what exactly does that mean? Because I think that right now, especially when you go on social media, it's all like, well, do I eat eggs or do I eat fatty meat? Like what do I eat? Because there's people like going around spewing crap about so many things.
Oh, I know. Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, like if you don't have any issues with eggs, eggs are great. Eggs are so great during pregnancy and postpartum. And a whole egg, not egg
Yeah,
whites.
I mean like the egg, like the yolk, the whole egg, everything about the egg, like it's
Yes.
literally nature's multivitamin.
I know it's so, and I love eggs. I know some people don't like eggs, but another thing that I really like to do, I should have mentioned this before, is and I'm still doing this, a big smoothie. I would
Mhm.
recommend weighing your ingredients for this because I've seen people like you can really overdo it with things in
Oh
the
my gosh,
smoothie.
you can overdo so many smoothies. Like I
Yeah.
remember my husband like watching him make a smoothie before he started tracking macros. I was like, "Oh
Yeah.
my goodness, that's like 2,000 calories."
Yeah, that's if you're bulking, cool. But
Yeah.
um but a smoothie is great because, you can pack it with like, I mean, I don't like to eat spinach personally, so I put frozen spinach in my smoothie.
You can't even
Um
taste it.
right, right. And then a bunch, a berry mix is always good for those antioxidants. But what I like to add to my smoothies is um a chia seed blend. I just get
Hmm.
this like it's like hemp seed, chia seed, and flax seed. I get it
Hmm.
at Walmart, like this big container. And I just
Nice.
add that. And I also add it into like if I'm baking, like I do this oat bake, so I add it in
Mhm.
there too.
Yeah.
So that's just an easy way to sneak some of those healthy fats in. And then when you're cooking, like cook with real olive oil, like,
Yes.
you know?
Thank you. Like, let's not use like the spray that could probably light
Yes.
your house on fire for some reason,
Yes.
you know?
Exactly. Or, like make your own salad dressing with it or
Yeah.
something like
Yeah.
that. So,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. What about red meats for women who are
oh,
postpartum? Like, would you
yes.
recommend red meat?
Yes, because of the iron, like for sure.
Hmm.
Red meat,
Hmm.
honestly, like I craved it so much during pregnancy
Which
and
usually means that you
no.
need it.
Yes, I know. And now, and I took this like more natural iron supplement that Earthly brand has a really good little tincture. So,
Hmm.
um, but yes, red meat is amazing for pregnancy and postpartum for sure.
Yeah. And just hormones in general, I think.
Yeah,
Again,
yeah,
another thing, women, I feel like a lot of women's problems like fatigue, brain fog, all these things could be fixed if they just fueled their bodies properly with
yeah.
like the right types of food and stopped fearing food, you know?
I know. And it's so sad. Like, well, like you said, you brought up your prep days. Like, we think
Yeah.
back and it's like when I first started macros, I got this meal plan and it was literally like egg whites for breakfast, ground turkey for lunch,
Yep.
like
Same,
that.
same. I was literally, if I could think back, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I wasn't eating like any fats. Like
Yeah,
the only fat I would have, I remember would be peanut butter. But then eventually it was like, oh, well, PB2, it doesn't have
yep.
fat in it.
I know. I know.
And it's
Oh
like
yeah,
now
that's
all these women have hormone problems at our age. And I'm like, I wonder why.
I know. Oh my gosh, it's crazy. Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I always forget to mention. Like, obviously avocado has good fats, but
Hmm.
like nut butters that don't have
Yep.
the added crap and then
Yeah.
nuts and stuff. So,
All good
but
stuff.
yeah. And I will
Cool.
say one other bonus with the healthy fats, I feel like it helps your skin so much too.
I agree.
Yeah, it's wild. I don't know.
And I think a lot of it again has to do with like that hormone.
Yeah,
Like fats
for
are
sure.
very beneficial for hormone production. And like again, a
Yeah,
lot of people, especially lately, unfortunately, have hormone issues because of
I
a
know.
lot of different environmental factors. Stress, I think, being one of the biggest factors why people have hormone issues, as well as just like
Yeah,
dieting and crash dieting, and then a lot of the stuff that's in the stuff that we put in our bodies and stuff like
for
that.
sure.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that's a whole nother topic, but like, that is one thing. When I had Gianna, my first baby, I switched all of like the things that I was putting on my skin and the things that we cleaned our house with and stuff. And
Yeah.
I think that is a big thing. Like, I know that's also very trendy right now too, but I
Mhm.
think that's important
I
for
think it's a
hormone health.
good trend. I think it's
Yes,
like
yeah.
it's one of those things where like if you use regular deodorant, it ain't gonna kill you.
Yes,
But like if you use regular deodorant and then use all these cleaners in your house and then put all
yes.
this other stuff on your, it's like all the things that compound that really matter. Yeah.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Mhm.
And you're never going to get away from everything, but
Yeah, absolutely.
I think like where you can swap things out, like it adds up. It makes a difference.
Hmm. Like some people get a little bit crazy with it. Like I saw
Mhm.
somebody saying like, "Oh, I don't touch receipts because it has
Yeah.
chemicals on," it. And I'm like, "Bruh, if you didn't like, if the receipt is what killed you, then like you have some other issues that need to be
Yeah, there
addressed."
was something else going on. So,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like you don't have to be like that. And especially it's always the people who I'm sure like somebody hands them the receipt and they're like, "Oh, I don't touch receipts because of this," and they start like spewing their stuff on the person, you know?
yep. And then they go home and drink alcohol. So,
Correct. And that's always how it is. It's like, how can you put that in your body? It has all of those toxic chemicals, and then they go home and drink bourbon.
I know it's wild.
Like, okay. Thanks, Karen. Love you.
I know,
Um,
seriously.
so deep core exercises, not getting back into it too quickly. We covered the
Mhm.
nutrition side. I do want to cover the hydration side because I think that's another big thing with
Oh,
not just water, but also electrolytes.
yes, yeah. That is super important. Well, because I mean, think back to when everyone was drinking a gallon a day because of 75 hard. Like
Yes.
so many people were probably depleting their electrolytes or throwing off the balance.
Hmm.
So, I electrolytes helped me so much during pregnancy. Like it did make me,
I've heard so many stories about how like
yeah,
somebody's having trouble like producing milk and then they
yeah,
start taking like an LMNT every single day with
yes.
electrolytes and it's like magic.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Hmm.
And that is the first thing. If you like, if your milk supply dips and, or like you're not producing enough, make sure you're drinking enough water. Like I think
Hmm.
it's like 80 or 90% water. So
Yeah.
like,
And
make sure you're
again, it's
drinking
one of
water.
those things that I think people just overestimate the or underestimate the importance of water
Uh-huh.
in general. Is like, oh, I feel like crap all the time. Well, when was the last time you had a glass of water? And I don't mean coffee or an energy drink. I mean like water, you
Actual
know?
water. I know.
Hmm.
I know.
Hmm.
And it's definitely easy, like, when you're, newly postpartum to want to just go reach for the caffeine right
Of
away.
course, yeah,
So
especially when you're so sleep deprived.
right, right. And that's something like that was a hard habit for me to get out of a few years ago was like drink water, eat something with your protein or with your coffee, even if it's protein coffee. So,
Yes, yes. I think again another thing is because like if you're waking up and you're immediately having caffeine and you're not
uh-huh.
drinking water and you're not having food with it, you're gonna just spike your cortisol more.
Yes, right. Which is another trendy thing, but there's so many natural ways to balance your cortisol, guys.
Correct. Yeah, just like most of it lifestyle related. Like honestly, like everything is trendy because that's how people make money. Like
Uh-huh.
habits don't make money.
Right.
But if I were to like say, hey, this is the actual way for you to balance out all your hormones, it'd be like the basic, simple stuff.
Yes, I know. I know.
Hmm. So as far as caffeine goes, like, do you currently drink caffeine?
I do. I try to keep it like I think the rule of thumb for pregnancy is keep it under 200 milligrams. That's what I try to do during like when I'm breastfeeding too. I honestly don't know what the rule is. I know you're supposed to
Yeah.
limit it. I
So no more
really
dry
sort of
scooping pre-workout.
yeah.
Darn. I've never done that.
Don't do that.
Yeah, yeah. I know you have.
It's yeah, no.
Would not recommend unless you have some sort of amazing capabilities to not choke on
I
pre-workout.
know. That's a trend that I'm really happy went away. So
Yeah, that was a trend for a hot minute. Everybody was dry scooping
I
and
know.
I was like,
It
I'm not about this. I'll just sip on. I want to enjoy the flavor of my pre-workout.
I
Sorry.
know. I will say First Form's old megawatt formulation though was like a pixie stick. So that
Yeah,
one
yeah. I could see that working much better. Yeah.
again, not good for your hormones though.
Yeah. Definitely don't do that. Would not recommend like snorting caffeine, but you know, it is what it is.
No, but I think they do recommend, like if you caffeine intake is definitely you want to keep it minimal, if not at all, while breastfeeding.
Yeah.
But again, some days it's just like I really need to like survive the day. So
Yeah. Do you generally do coffee or you do energy drinks, pre-workouts? What do you typically lean on?
No, I pretty much keep it to coffee these days. So
Yeah. It's
honestly,
like
I feel better that way if I just do coffee, but
I totally get that. Like there's something about coffee too.
yes,
It's like a warm hug for the soul.
it really is. I know. Hot, cold, I don't care. Just
Like that first sip, it just hits.
yeah. The other thing I will say is like, because I did have someone asking about vegan protein powders and like
Hmm.
maybe their whey protein affecting their baby. Um, I do try to monitor that. Like if I
Hmm.
notice she's extra fussy or spitting up more, I'm like, shoot, what did I eat? Like
Yeah.
maybe something is like affecting her. So
And that's something I
um
would never think about either, unless like I was in that situation, because like
yeah,
literally what goes into your body is basically what she's getting.
right.
Which
So
again is why it's so important to pay attention to the quality of the food that you're eating, because if you're just eating
yes.
crap because
Hmm.
you're not getting your own stuff together, then
Yeah,
you have the baby who's suffering from this as well. And then it's
I
probably
know.
adding more stress to your life because the baby's fussier and not
Because
feeling.
now they're fussy. It's so true. Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's like, yeah, you got to be a little selfless because you have someone else like depending on you more,
Mhm.
more so than just like keeping them
I feel
alive.
like a lot of women too might thrive in that situation. Like, oh, I need to take care of myself now because they're doing it for their baby instead of it's just for themselves. Most people
Yes. Hmm.
won't do anything for
Right.
themselves, but they'll do it for like their dog or their kid, you know?
It's so true. Yeah. Yeah. Like
Hmm.
even, spending money, like they won't spend money on themselves, but we'll go spend all this on our kids, which I mean, is not a bad thing,
Yeah.
but
But you got to treat yourself sometimes, right?
yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
Like you're
Especially if
important
it's
too.
investment in
So,
self, right? Because I
hmm
have so many women who are like, oh, well, I can't invest in coaching because,
yes.
this, when they could, it's just like they're thinking not for themselves, they're thinking for like their children, which again, it's important, but it's
Right.
also important, like, in order to be selfless, you have to be selfish because you can't be your best self unless you're giving yourself what you need.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And that kind of goes back to like, you know, your mood and stuff. Like you have to have a little bit. I know certain situations people don't. Like if you're a single mom, and you don't have any help, like that's different. But if you have a spouse, let them help you. Like tell them you need an hour to go do a workout alone with no one
Hmm.
interrupting you.
Hmm.
Like,
I think that
it's
communication piece is big, and I think it's one
hmm
that people don't use enough. They just assume like, oh, they're not going to let me do this, or they just create
yes,
this story in their head. And I
for
think again,
sure.
that's the problem people deal with just like in relationships and stuff in general. Like you
Yeah.
you see your spouse leave in the morning and the wind catches the door and it slams, and then you're
Yeah.
like, oh no, what did I do? And the whole day you're like destroying yourself when in all
Yep.
reality nothing's wrong.
Right. And then you have resentment and
Mhm.
stuff. Like
And
it's,
then
I
it
mean,
just
I've
builds
been
up.
there.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
totally been there too. But like, it's always like, hey, once we communicate, it's like, oh, it was my fault. I just made a mistake, you know?
Oh,
But most people don't
right.
go out and be like, hey, what did I do? Like, let's have a conversation when nothing actually happened.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
I do. That's such a good point. Like the communication piece, like you have to have it. So, I mean, because most of our spouses, significant others, they're not mind readers. So,
Correct. Right. Yes. They want to be, and we
yep.
want them to be. We want them to be. And
They
then you have
mean
to really.
well. They mean well.
Exactly. And you have to take a step back and kind of look at it from that person's perspective. Like if
Hmm.
you're mad at somebody because they did something and you're like, well, let me think about it from their perspective. I don't think they're trying to maliciously hurt me. So what is their,
Right.
right?
Yeah. That is so true. Man,
Hmm.
I needed to hear that. Like when my husband leaves his cups on the counter, he's not maliciously trying to make me mad.
Yeah, I know. I have to think about that too. Like, why didn't you fold the towel after washing your hands? I don't get it.
I know.
That's just a man thing though, I think.
It totally is.
But then we have all of our things as women. So it's
I was
just,
gonna, yeah, I was gonna say I have plenty of
oh
things.
yeah,
So
so many things where I'm just like, I'm so sorry I'm the way I am.
yeah,
So glad you love me.
right.
So we kind of covered all like the basics as far as like movement, nutrition.
Mhm.
What other things, if there is anything, do you think is important for somebody to focus on if they want to successfully like work through this phase of time after pregnancy?
So one thing, I mean, I know we kind of talked about like the deep core, pelvic floor
Hmm.
work,
Hmm.
but I think like being mindful of symptoms is super important.
Hmm.
So like leakage, obviously that's a very common one. People joke about it all the time. urinary leakage. Like it, yeah, it's kind of like funny, but it's also like, do you really want to live like that? Like you can,
Yeah.
if, I mean, you may not be able to fix it completely, but you can improve it. So,
Mm-hmm.
which is going to improve your quality of life. Because I know people that won't go do things because they're scared, if I sneeze, I'm going to leak. Like I got to wear a
Mm-hmm.
pad kind of thing. Um, and then what I was experiencing, and this was totally new to me. Um, so there's definitely, I think there's like, I don't know, there's like minor to severe prolapse of your pelvic floor organs.
Mm-hmm.
And I was having feeling mine wasn't anything crazy yet, but I was experiencing some heaviness down
Yeah.
there, which feels very weird. And I was
Yeah.
getting it after heavy front squats. That's the only thing.
Mm.
Um,
Interesting.
so I think people should be mindful of that because that for me, I was just like, I didn't really know what it was. I was so uncomfortable. I was like, what is going on?
Yeah, I
Like,
bet.
so just like there's so many weird things that can happen. And another thing to be aware about, and I think this is pretty popular and the education is getting out there. Um, but yes, we want to look for the finger width separation for diastasis recti. I know I say that wrong and different, but
I always, Brooke, I haven't said it once on this podcast because I was hoping you would say it.
no, I don't say it the right way.
I say it improperly too, but everybody knows what we're talking about. It's when you have like,
Yeah.
it looks like you have a really separated six pack basically
Oh,
without like the
right.
actual six pack.
Yeah. So, yes, like the width is important, but also the depth. So when you're
Mm-hmm.
checking for that, the depth is very important because that's just controlling that pressure there.
Mm-hmm.
So, some things to look for are just that bulging down the midline. Some people call it coning down the
Mm-hmm.
midline. It's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
I think some moves, it's going to be a little inevitable that it's going to happen. I was talking to my PT about this,
Mm-hmm.
but the biggest thing is that we're controlling that
Mm-hmm.
pressure during those movements. So that's just some things to look out for that I feel like not everyone knows
Yeah.
to look for.
Especially
Um,
first time mothers. Like they have no
mhm.
idea, unless they have like somebody who's very, very close to them who's been through this.
Yes. Yeah. And then one other thing, again, this is like something that I didn't know about my first C-section. I've had two C-sections now, and this time I do have a little bit of that overhang, which
Mm-hmm.
is typically due to so like some scar adhesions causing, I mean, it could be due to like loose skin,
Right.
extra adipose tissue there too. Um, but a lot of people also complain about numbness below and above the scar for
Mm.
years. So
Really?
if you start doing some scar desensitizing and scar massage, obviously this is something you ease into, and you have to make sure your incision's healed. But scar massage can help a ton with like the look of your scar or the look of that overhang, and just the feel of your scar, even if you're experiencing some pain. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something because C-sections are very common these days too. So
Yeah.
that's again a
Yeah.
whole nother topic, but
That's actually interesting because like you think about it, like if you want to heal something better,
mhm,
right? You need to apply some sort of like you need the nutrients to kind of get there. And the only way to
yeah,
do that sometimes is like sensitizing that
right.
area, right? So like
Yeah,
if you're
yeah,
promoting blood flow to the area, it's going to heal much faster than if you were just like leave it and then it's numb, which means that there's no
yes,
blood flow.
exactly. Yeah, that's such a good point. And I've only been, well, I've been doing it for a little over a month now, but
Hmm.
definitely seen improvement so far.
That's
So,
cool.
yeah,
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's something I again, like I've never had a kid, never
yeah,
thought about it yet. Like, there's been
right.
conversations, but at the same time, it's like I have a lot of stuff that I kind of want to do first, and we
Yeah,
need to see if we can actually get pregnant too. That's a thing.
yeah, yeah,
So it's all, I feel like a lot of people don't know what to expect after having a kid. Like you're just like, okay, I got pregnant. And then it's like,
yeah,
okay, now I have to, get through the pregnancy. And then it's like, oh no, I have this kid. Like, what do I do? And you're just kind of
yeah.
thrown into like, you're taking care of the child. But
Hmm.
then it's like, what do I do for me? Right.
Yeah, right, right. It's so true. Like, and it's getting talked about more, but no one, my first pregnancy, like, no one prepared me for postpartum. Like,
Yeah,
that you hear all about pregnancy, you don't hear anything about postpartum.
I
Like, oh
agree.
my
That's exactly
God.
why I wanted to do this podcast and where I like thought about it is because I was thinking about, oh, okay, like pregnancy, you kind of have ideas of like, oh, the first trimester, second trimester, we got the third trimester, but then it's like, oh, I give birth.
Yep,
Now what?
I know. it's crazy.
survive.
Yeah, I wish people talked about it like a little more.
Hmm.
But and again, everyone's situation is so different. It depends a lot like how you're, if you had a traumatic birth, that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
and then again back to the stress and the breastfeeding. But I will say, um, it's kind of just like your parental instincts just kick in, like
Yeah.
mom and dad. Like
That makes
you're
sense.
right, there's no manual. You just you
Just
just
kind of
kind of
go
know
in.
what to do. And
Yeah.
every kid's so different. So
Mm.
that is my best advice is don't look at something you see on the internet and be like, oh my gosh, they're sleep training their kid. I have to start sleep training my kid. They're doing this. Why is my kid not doing that? Like, do not get sucked into that because every kid is so, so different. Like milestones, it's all just like guidelines. It's not,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So, because I got sucked into that with Gianna, and this time around, again, I just have no expectations. Like,
Yeah. I think that's amazing. I think that's
yeah,
such a great way to do it because then that way you're never disappointed or let down to the
yes,
point where you feel so frustrated and defeated. But then
right,
you're also you have more of an open mind, I think, in that
yeah,
scenario. So that way
for
you're like
sure.
learning things and you're like pivoting better than you would have in the past.
Definitely. And I definitely contribute that. Yes, my mindset is completely different. Like
Hmm.
how I handle and respond to things completely
Oh,
different.
I'm sure. Yeah,
So
you've had a journey over the last 5.5 years between
yeah,
pregnancies.
so that is a really good point. But
And I think,
it's
and
just
this was something I
crazy.
wanted to say at the beginning is like, I think one of the reasons why maybe you had a healthier pregnancy or where you didn't feel as, crappy maybe was because of how on point you've been with your health and fitness and mindset
Right.
between pregnancies.
Yep. And that's something Liz was talking about a lot too, like
Hmm.
night and day, just like how you feel. And we both had really bad acne during pregnancy. This
Hmm.
time I didn't get it. And I know
Yeah.
I know every pregnancy is different, but I do definitely think that's part of it.
Yeah. And
So,
like the skin stuff has a lot to do with gut, which has a lot to do with
yep.
stress and stuff like that.
Right. Right.
Super
Yeah.
interesting when you start connecting things like that.
I know it's so crazy. Yeah.
It's awesome. Well, this has been such a great episode of the podcast. I'm so excited that we did this. It
Yeah.
did
Thanks
take
for
us a
having me
while to do
on.
it, but it's been a really good time. And I think it just made it perfect that you have Lily there with you
Yeah.
through this.
Real
Awesome.
life.
Oh, 100%. Well, that's all we got for today, guys. Hopefully we'll probably have Brooke on again because I just like talking to Brooke and she has a lot
I
of great
know.
value to share. It's
Thanks for
great.
having me on.
For sure. Well, go out today and do one thing that takes you one step closer to where you want to be.